Transformers, Generation 1, a case study for action figure resource.
Action figures. Resource. actionfiguresresource.com.
Transformers rivals Star Wars in terms of sheer mind-boggling amount of toys produced and media created to sell these toys. To that end, this report will be focusing on the time period between 1984 and 1991, known to fans as Generation 1. It began as a joint venture between Japanese toy company Takara, which is Tomy in English, and American giants Hasbro. The idea, which had previously brought Hasbro success with their new G.I. Joe line, and what became the standard to which toys became sold from that point on, was to create an animated series and spin-off comic full of bright, colourful characters locked in eternal warfare. The kids would then go out and buy the toys of their favourite characters and be forever on the lookout for new bots to add to their collection. Watch the original cartoon closely and note how often the characters refer to one another by name, the repetition ensuring recognition within the aisles of Toys R Us.
Diaclone レスキュー隊員。彼らは普段君たちと同じ生活をしていますが、しかしいざという時、彼らの乗る車はロボットに代わって救助活動を担当する。君のメカはワンボックスかカウンタックか。ダイアクロンカーロボット。
The first few waves almost universally used molds from two lines that Takara had already established in their native Japan, Microman from 1974 and Diaclone from 1980. Microman had already been imported to the USA by the Mego Corporation as Micronauts. After Mego folded in '82, Hasbro bought the rights to both lines for distribution in the USA, although in return, Takara retained the rights to distribute in Japan. Jim Shooter wrote the overarching story of the ongoing warfare between the Autobots and Decepticons. Fans will be familiar with how the design of the vehicular form of each character always took precedence over the bot form in the first few waves. It was editor Bob Budiansky's task over one long weekend to humanize these characters, revising profiles initially written by Marvel and DC comic writer Dennis O'Neil. Budiansky later went on to write the tie-in comic and character profiles included with the toys. Hasbro then commissioned Sunbow to produce the tie-in cartoon series that became the first season. In Japan, it was named Fight Super Robot Lifeform Transformers, and the toys were redesigned, simplified, and further humanized to create the chunky, approachable characters that proved to be such a hit on screen. On a personal note, Peter Cullen's performance as Optimus Prime was what swung it for me. Rather than playing it as a bellowing, gung-ho military stereotype like most of his competitors for the role, he based his quiet, grave, and inspiring leader on his own brother Larry, who had served in Vietnam. Always seeking an alternative to combat until given no choice, at which point he is an unparalleled warrior, exemplified in this serious vocal approach as well as deed, made the character instantly iconic, up there with Kevin Conroy's Batman.
Megatron has beaten me according to Cybertron law. To violate that law would destroy our honor. We will comply and leave this Earth forever. As you command, Optimus.
Opposite Cullen was the great Frank Welker as Megatron, as well as Soundwave and various other bots. Megatron being characterized as a gun made perfect sense. His only thoughts are to oppress and to destroy that which defies him. Up against an earnest, hard-working American truck, this made for an effective conflict dynamic. In toy form, Megatron was based on a Walther PP-8 with attachable barrel extensions, as well as a stock and a scope. This was clearly inspired by the gun used by Napoleon Solo in the 1965 TV show The Man from U.N.C.L.E., one that had already received its own toy. The Transformers model came from the Microman toy line and is understandably banned on planes in the USA. You even need a special license to own it in Australia. Since Generation 1, Megatron has been characterized as a tank and a jet, rather than go through the difficulties of marketing a realistic-looking firearm. The irony being, if he was an unrealistic-looking space-age ray gun, it's not much of a disguise.
But this time I shall not be denied. This device will enable me to strike at the Autobots through Optimus Prime's only weakness, his overdeveloped sense of honor.
The show started with a 3-episode mini-series in which we got introduced to the following Autobots: Hound, Jazz, Mirage, Sunstreaker, and Wheeljack. All were based on Diaclone designs. Prowl, Bluestreak, and later Smokescreen are all based on the same Diaclone car model. Ratchet and Ironhide likewise are repaints of the same van, which bore little to no resemblance to their cartoon counterparts, seemingly missing heads. This was because the Diaclone line came with inch-high tiny men to pilot them, and Ironhide was thus more of a mech suit. Trailbreaker was later remoulded as Hoist, Sideswipe as Red Alert. There were also a number of mini-bots for kids with slightly lower budgets, in the form of Bumblebee, Cliffjumper, Gears, Huffer, and Windcharger. These were all based on designs from the Microman toy line.
Megatron, my leader, we are alive again.
Meanwhile, Megatron had his own army, which included 3 virtually identical Diaclone planes with different colour schemes: Starscream, Skywarp, and Thundercracker. Soundwave, the cassette recorder, and his spies Laserbeak, Ravage, and Rumble were all originally from the Microman line, or more specifically, the Micro Change line, all of which transformed into household objects.
宇宙からやってきた謎の物体、ラジオかと思えば、あらら、ロボットにチェンジ。うひゃひゃー、これが噂のカメレオン感覚。使える、遊べる、実用ミクロチェンジシリーズ。
After the initial mini-series, 5 Dinobots were created: Slag, Sludge, and Grimlock, and later Snarl and Swoop. Soundwave got another cassette named Frenzy, the Insecticons, Shrapnel, Bombshell, and Kickback, and the Constructicons, Scrapper, Hook, Mixmaster, Longhaul, Bone Crusher, and Scavenger, joined the ranks of despicable robot evil. All of the above based on Diaclone toys, and the latter group able to combine a la Voltron to form Devastator. Hasbro were at this point developing their own new Transformers, but the lead times on creating new toys are far longer than remarketing old ones. As a result, there was a lot of frantic scrabbling for new prospective bots that existed outside the already exhausted Diaclone and Microman lines. There was Shockwave, who stayed behind to guard Cybertron for the 4 million years that the two factions are away. During this time nothing seems to happen, which always struck me as odd. This was one of the first figures not to be derived from Diaclone or Microman. Instead, the Astro Magnum model, imbued with an unfortunately placed groinal trigger, was bought by Hasbro from a company named Toyco. 2 more models were utilised from a company called Toy Box: Skylynx and Omega Supreme. Reflector was a camera that divided into 3 bots and only available from Hasbro via mail order. An enormous plane named Jetfire was rendered in toy form based on the designs of the Valkyrie in the Macross series. However, this was made by a company named Takara, who were brought out by Bandai, Takara's chief rivals in the toy market. This meant that while Hasbro could market it within America and Europe, Takara could not do the same in Japan, as Bandai were relaunching the Macross line. The design was altered for the TV show and renamed Skyfire, and US production ceased soon after to prevent further copyright dispute. More short-lived models mined from Takara included Roadbuster, Whirl, and the Deluxe Insecticons. Season 2 of the cartoon began in 1985, and with its additional 49 episodes, brought it up to syndication numbers. The ongoing storyline was put aside in favour of self-contained character-based episodes. A whole swathe of new bots were brought in, with no fanfare or explanation. They were just there. The last Diaclone cards appeared as Trax, Skids, and the basically identical Inferno and Grapple. Perceptor, the microscope, and Blaster, the boombox, came from the same micro-change transforming household objects line that Soundwave did, along with Blaster's cassettes, Steeljaw, Ramhorn, Eject, and Rewind. More mini Autobots included Beachcomber, Cosmos, Powerglide, Sea Spray, and Warpath. Decepticons received the first triple changes, which again were, as you might guess, originally Diaclone, in the form of Blitzwing and Astrotrain. A final Diaclone line, cancelled in favour of simply making them Transformers, consisted of the combining sets of Stunticons, Combaticons, Aerial Bots, and Protector Bots. The Starscream model was used a further 3 times for Dirge, Ramjet, and Thrust.
The Transformers will return after these messages.